Hi, my name is Tamara, and you are watching Things Even a Monkey Should Know. Thanks so much for watching again today. As you know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I am not a professional at this do-it-yourself stuff. I'm just a girl who's figured out that there are a lot of things around the house and out in the yard and on my cars that I can do myself and save myself a pretty good bundle of money. So today I'm going to be working on fixing a crack in concrete. This is going to be a cosmetic fix only. What I'm doing is not going to glue the foundation back together, but it is also not a terribly deep crack. So let's get started. So as always, of course, I'm going to go over what we're going to need today first. And actually this process is going to span several days because things have to cure before I can come back and finish them. But I'm laying out everything that we'll need over those several days. So the first thing you're going to need is a hammer and a cold chisel. Make sure that it is a cold chisel, not a wood chisel, because a wood chisel is going to go dull pretty quickly on concrete. You're going to need a vacuum cleaner. You will definitely need a rag, and make sure that it's a rag that you're not very attached to, because there's a good chance that you'll be throwing it away when you're done. You're going to need gloves, eye protection, safety stuff. You may need a bottle of water. You're going to need some concrete patch, which I actually like to do a double, two different kinds. I like to use this concrete repair in the tube that's a quickcrete repair, and then I also like to use this other quickcrete repair second. The reason being is that I am actually repairing a crack that runs through the foundation of my house, and I have exposed concrete floors. And this is very good stuff, but it's very grainy and or gritty, and so it doesn't match the texture excuse me, of the rest of the floor. This stuff is very smooth, and so I like to finish off with it. So this I use for the deepest part of the cracks, and then this goes on top. And I haven't had really good luck using this all the way through in the crack, so that's why I combine them. So we have the caulk version, and then we also have the concrete crack self-leveling, very smooth filler that comes in a self-dispensing bottle. Of course, for caulk, you're going to need a caulk gun. You'll need a knife to cut the tip of your caulking tube. You'll need a spreader or spatula of some sort. I actually really like these things. You find these in the car care department. They're Bondo spatulas, but I actually really like them for concrete work. You will need a grinder with a concrete grinding wheel on it, which is not what this one is, and I apparently misplaced that grinding wheel, but I will find it in a minute. But it will say specifically that it's for concrete. And of course, using the grinder, you're going to need some hearing protection too. So I think that's all we're going to need, and so let's get started actually working on this crack. Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt myself right here. Yes, I did a huge word change right in the middle of this segment, just kidding. But I'm going to go ahead and interrupt myself right here to tell you that I know I said just a second ago to use a grinder, or you might need to use a grinder depending on how finished you want to get your floor, but I actually found that it is much easier to use a belt sander with a 40 grit sanding belt on it, and so I just wanted to make that little correction. Never mind the grinder, use a sander. And also, I think I neglected to say you're going to need something for breathing protection too. That was all. So I bet some of you guys that know more about concrete than I do are going to look at this crack that I'm taking care of, and you're going to say, you nut, there's a foundation problem. But I will just go ahead and tell you I had someone out to look at my foundation just to make sure that this was not indeed a foundation issue. And it's not. All it is where there were electrical lines laid through my floor, they were laid too close to the surface. So now, as you know, metal expands at a different rate than concrete. So now I have these nice cracks to deal with. So let me tell you what I'm going to do. I am, and this, by the way, would be applicable also, of course, for filling cracks in your driveway too. Although you might not need to do quite as finished of a look as I'm going to be doing. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to take my hammer and chisel and I'm going to open up the cracks a little bit more to make them where they can accept the concrete patch better, and also to get rid of their jagged edges. So I'm going to kind of smooth off the edges. So ideally, you would like for your crack to wind up as an inverted V. However, I've found if you try to do that, you're going to wind up breaking away and making your crack even bigger, which we don't want to do that. So all that I try to do is just make everything as smooth and not jagged as possible. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So I'm just going to be quiet and start my working. There's a good reason to do this, along with, again, smoothing out the edges a little bit so that so they're not jaggedy. It also helps to open up the cracks a little bit where they might be a little bit small for the filler to reach. And also in some of those places back down there were some loose pieces that needed to come out that I was able to go ahead and knock loose. Am I going to have to probably work the cracks a little bit again in a couple years? Yes, but I won't have to do all this prep work because the cracks will be very small. And also the filler that I'm using is kind of it winds up being, it's hard like concrete, but it winds up being kind of rubbery, so it has a little more flex to it so that it's not going to open up into a big ugly crack like this. So when my floor changes temperature at a different rate than the electrical stuff underneath, then there shouldn't be quite as big of a difference as far as the flex goes. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to vacuum up all of this mess I made. You want to make sure that the crack is very clean. So vacuum it very thoroughly because you do not want any dust or anything left in there because it will cause the filler that we're going to use to not be able to adhere properly to your concrete, and so there's a chance of it coming out. So we want to make sure that this is so clean you could eat off of it. Okay, so we're to the next part, which is actually putting in the first part of the concrete repair, which is, again, this part, the caulk version, which is pretty gritty, but it gets down in there and it really fills those cracks really nicely. Like I said, I don't like it as a finisher simply because it is so gritty and it doesn't match the slick surface of my floor. So we all know how to safely open a caulk tube. Yes, in fact, make sure I don't cut my floor. I'm going to go ahead and cut off that tip at an angle. Of course, you need to puncture the inside of the tube. Hopefully you have a puncturing, there we go, thing on there. Something I should have done before I punctured that tube, since it leaks some fluid out, is put on my gloves, which you always want to wear safety gloves whenever you are working with concrete because it is quite corrosive to your skin, even though this is just a patch. And also, just to be on the safe side, we want to go ahead and use our safety glasses too. So I'm going to go ahead and put my caulk in the tube, and what I like to do with this, it doesn't say to in the directions, but I like to go ahead and just wet down the crack a little bit before I start putting the filler in it, because I prefer, it helps keep the concrete from soaking the fluid out of this filler too quickly, so just really lightly mist it, you know, don't saturate it. And what I do as I go along is I get a good bit of filler out, and then I will actually work on smoothing it out if it's, and putting it down in the crack further if it happens to get above the crack. So, and then of course the towel for wiping up any excess, and I think that's all. So I'm going to go ahead and just get to work. So if you have any excess around the edges, of course you can use your towel to wipe it up. It largely disappears when it dries, but it's still not a bad idea to wipe up the excess. And as I said, this stuff is pretty gritty. It's not real easy to spread with a spatula, but as you could see me, I was, you know, kind of just helping to shove it down into the cracks and just generally smooth it out. So what we need to do now is let this set for 24 hours so that we have a really nice solid base of this gritty filler. And then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll put the smooth stuff on top. So I'll see you in a little while. Hey guys, so we're back with day 2 of this. Now overall, obviously, this process doesn't really take that long of a time. It's just that you have to give things time to set and time to cure. So it's been a day, a little over actually, and my initial caulk stuff that I put down here in this crack has set. It's nice and hard. So now I'm going to use this other crack seal that doesn't have such a grit to it, and I'm going to apply it on top. And what I'm going to do now, in a driveway, you wouldn't have to be quite as particular with you know, covering it unless you really wanted to blend it in very carefully. But since it's in my house, I'm going to be blending this in as carefully as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting down this stuff, which is pretty liquidy. And safety glasses on, of course. And then I'm going to smooth it and kind of blend it out into the rest of the floor as I go. I'm going to let it set for another 24 hours. Curing time and allowing everything to set as long as it's necessary is very important. So I'll see you again tomorrow. So we are on day 3, the final day of the concrete fixing, and the last thing that I'm going to do, of course, you may not need to do this depending on how finished you want this to be. Again, since I'm doing it on a smooth floor, I need kind of a smooth finish so that whenever I put my opaque stain over it, then everything blends together. So what I'm going to do now, since everything is dry, I'm going to go, or set rather, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my belt sander with the 40 grit sandpaper. And it's going to make a bit of a mess, which is why you want to make sure that you have your breathing protection so that you don't breathe concrete patch dust, because that would be gross. You want to have your eye protection. Of course, you want to have your hearing protection because all these things are noisy. It's going to make a bit of a mess, but it's not too bad. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sanding down just the little bits, the lumps and little things that are kind of uneven, making everything just kind of smooth and flat along in here. So after I do that, then I'm going to vacuum up all the pieces. And I think that's it. So let me put on my apparatus and we'll get started. First of all, I'm the same person, you just used a sander on concrete. Actually, I didn't. I used it on concrete patch, which the second patch that I used, seeing as how it's more plasticky and kind of rubbery, it actually sands very nicely. And so my goal was just to get it smooth, you know, again, even with the texture of the concrete, so that whenever I put my opaque stain over it, then everything blends together. if you had stopped with the caulk type patch, you wouldn't want to be sanding it because it was very gritty and it would tear up your sandpaper. As it is, this is still, you know, kind of tough on a belt sander. Not terrible, it's doable. But you did see that I had to change out the belt a couple of times, but it works well. If you're being super picky with it, which I am because I want this to look, you know, completely smooth, you may have to go back and patch a couple little places again. But it really, this should be the bulk of the work, and you should be pretty much finished, and then you can make your decision as to where you want to go from here. Again, if you're doing a driveway, you're not going to need to get this smooth, and in fact, of course, you can use just this patch even for driveways, but I like to even, you know, if I had a concrete driveway, I still like to try to match how things look so that it's not a big sort of eyesore whenever you're looking at things. So it looks like, I guess we're finished here. Okay guys, so we're at the end of today's monkey business, and I just want to reiterate that I am fully aware, thank you very much, that a professional concrete contractor would not do things the way that I just did them. I am not a professional, as I have said just a few times before. But I also don't feel like paying a professional to come in and break out the top section of my slab that has the cracks in it to replace it, because this would be $5,000–6,000, something like that. And it's just not worth it to me whenever I can go through and I can patch the cracks myself. And again, I may, in a couple of years, there's a chance that I may have a little hairline crack that comes in the place that I just patched, but that'll be really easy to fix with that same smooth sort of rubbery patch. But again, since I used this stuff that is a little bit flexible, then there's not nearly as big of a chance of it cracking open again. So I think that was the last things that I wanted to tell you. And I hope maybe you learned something or got some ideas anyways for fixing cracks of your own. And thanks for joining me today. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. There's a wee tiny little subscribe button up in the top, that'd be top right corner of the screen. YouTube won't let me make it any bigger, can't figure that one out yet. But anyway, it's there, so if you don't mind, please subscribe, and thanks again, and I'll see you next time.